When you think of a cyber attack, you probably picture glowing lines of code, sophisticated malware, and shadowy figures breaking through digital firewalls. Well, the first real cyber attack didn't have any of that. No computers, no internet, not even electricity. It all went down in 1834. This is the story of how two brothers used a telescope and a bribed insider to hack an entire country's communication network and get ridiculously rich doing it. So, how was a cyber attack even possible in the 1830s? First, you need to understand the internet of that era. The French semaphore telegraph, invented by Claude Chappe in the 1790s, this thing was a mechanical wonder and a total game-changer for communication. It was a network of towers built on hilltops, each just in sight of the next, stretching for hundreds of kilometers across France. Every tower had a huge mast with two movable wooden arms. An operator in one tower would use a telescope to watch the tower before it. When its arms moved into a specific shape, the operator would scramble to move their own tower's arms to match, shooting the symbol down the line. Think of it like a giant, countrywide game of telephone played with enormous wooden robots. For its time, this system was absurdly fast. A single symbol could travel over 200 kilometers from Paris to Lille in under 10 minutes. News that used to take days to arrive by horse-drawn coach could now zip across the nation in hours. But this revolutionary network had one giant, deliberate catch. It was for government use only. The signals flying across the French countryside were state secrets, military orders, and official government business. The codes were complex and top secret. In fact, most operators just copied the shapes they saw, with no clue what they were actually sending. The network was designed to be a secure, closed system. But as we know, no system is ever truly secure, especially when human greed gets involved. Enter our hackers, Francois and Joseph Blanc. These twin brothers were sharp, ambitious, and ran a successful banking business in the city of Bordeaux. They traded government bonds, a market that swung wildly based on news from the Paris Stock Exchange. Knowing whether the market in Paris was up or down, even just a few hours before anyone else in Bordeaux, could mean the difference between a nice profit and an absolute fortune. Their problem was simple: the speed of information. While the government had its super-fast semaphore, the Blanc brothers, like every other private citizen, had to wait for the mail coach. It would lumber its way from Paris to Bordeaux over several days, and by the time they got the market data, it was ancient history. The opportunity was long gone. The brothers were obsessed. They tried carrier pigeons, but the birds were flaky and unreliable. They needed a bulletproof way to get that information faster than their competitors. And then their eyes turned to those strange wooden towers on the hills outside the city. The semaphore line ran right past Bordeaux on its way to Spain. It was the fastest information highway in the world, and it was so close they could almost taste it. If they could just figure out how to sneak one tiny piece of their own information onto that network, they'd have an unbeatable edge. The question was, how do you hack a system that's purely mechanical and visible to everyone? The genius of the Blanc brothers' plan was that they didn't try to break the system. They decided to exploit it from the inside, using its own rules against it. Their scheme was a brilliant piece of social engineering and a 19th century version of a man-in-the-middle attack. They had to get around two big security features. First, The messages were encoded, and only senior officials at major hubs had the code books to translate them. Second, messages were checked for errors. At key points, like the city of Tours, a manager would decode the message to make sure it was intact before sending it on. This meant the Blancs couldn't just insert a fake message. It would be caught. This is where their brilliant hack comes in. The brothers found a crucial loophole in the system, a built-in backspace function. If an operator messed up and moved the arms to the wrong position, they would send a special backspace symbol. The person at the end of the line would see that signal and know to just ignore the previous character. The mistake would be seen by everyone down the line, but it would be officially erased from the final message. That was their light bulb moment. They didn't need to send a whole message. They just needed to inject a single accidental symbol. Their plan was simple. First, they needed an accomplice in Paris watching the stock market. Second, they needed an insider. They found a weak link, the telegraph director in Tours, a station located after the main security check but before Bordeaux, and they bribed him. Finally, they hired another accomplice, a former operator, to rent a room in Bordeaux with a clear view of the final telegraph tower. Here's how it worked. When the market in Paris made a big move, their guy would send an innocent-looking package to the operator in Tours. Court records suggest that different items in the package, like gloves or socks, signified if the market was up or down. Once he got the package, the bribed operator would wait for a government message to pass through. He'd then deliberately add an extra symbol to the message, one that secretly meant mark it up or mark it down, and immediately follow it with the backspace signal. To the official transcribers, it just looked like a clumsy operator error that was instantly fixed. But the Blancs man, watching the tower with his telescope, wasn't looking for the official message. He was watching for the error. That one symbol told the brothers everything they needed to know. For 2 years, from 1834 to 1836, the scheme was flawless. It was a silent, illegal operation happening in plain sight across the French countryside. Picture it. In Paris, an agent watches the trading floor. The market shifts, and he calmly sends a parcel of clothing by coach to Tours. Days later, the package arrives. The operator, a man named Gabriel Renault, knows what it means. He waits for the clatter of an incoming government dispatch. At the perfect moment, he moves the levers to insert his secret symbol, then quickly sends the backspace signal to say, "Oops, never mind." That signal, error and all, flies from tower to tower, racing south at hundreds of kilometers an hour. Operator after operator copies the sequence, not knowing its real meaning. Then, in Bordeaux, a man sits by a window, telescope trained on the final tower. He ignores the official symbols and waits for just one specific prearranged sign. When he sees it, he knows. He rushes the news to François and Joseph Blanc. Armed with this information hours or even days before their rivals, the Blanc brothers traded with near-perfect certainty. While other bankers were just guessing, they were operating on a sure thing. Their wealth exploded, and their success became legendary. Though no one could figure out how they did it. They were running the world's first high-frequency trading operation, not with fiber optics and algorithms, but with telescopes, bribes, and a pair of socks. This story is an amazing reminder that the core principles of hacking, exploiting systems, and human behavior are absolutely timeless. If you love digging up these forgotten chapters of tech history, think about subscribing for more stories just like this one. Of course, every secret operation has a weak point. For the Blanc brothers, It wasn't the technology or a sharp-eyed official. It was the simple fact that people get sick. After 2 years of running the scam without a hitch, their key man in Tours, Gabriel Renault, fell gravely ill. Desperate to keep the money flowing, he made a fatal mistake. He told a friend everything, hoping to recruit him as a replacement. He probably figured his friend would jump at the chance to get a piece of the action. But the friend was either more honest or more scared than Renault thought. Instead of joining the conspiracy, he went straight to the authorities and spilled the entire plot. Suddenly, the whole thing unraveled. With the confession, investigators connected the dots between the strange errors in the telegraph logs, the packages arriving in Tours, and the Blanc brothers' incredible luck on the stock market. The brothers and their accomplices were arrested. After 2 years in the shadows, the first cyber attack in history was over. The Blanc brothers went on trial in 1837. The prosecution laid out the whole ingenious scheme: the bribes, the secret codes, the exploitation of the backspace signal. The facts were clear. The brothers had manipulated a national data network to get rich. It seemed like an open and shut case. But then the court acquitted them. Francois and Joseph Blanc walked free, not because they were innocent, but because in 1837, there was no law against what they had done. They got a fine for bribery, but they weren't convicted for the hack itself because the concept of data as something you could steal didn't legally exist. The telegraph line was out in the open, so how could you steal a signal transmitted in plain sight? And since the network was for the government, no law existed to punish a private citizen for misusing it. They had found a legal loophole just as brilliant as their technical one, and they got to keep the money. Embarrassed and stunned, the French government scrambled to pass a new law, making it illegal to misuse the telegraph network. The story of the Blanc brothers is way more than a historical oddity. It's the birth of cybersecurity. Their attack had all the elements we see in modern hacks: exploiting a system vulnerability, the backspace, social engineering, bribing an insider, and a man-in-the-middle attack to manipulate information. It proved that any new communication technology will immediately be tested by people looking to exploit it. It's a timeless lesson. Cybersecurity is never just about technology. It's about understanding that the weakest link is almost always human. The same drive that motivated the Blanc brothers in 1834 lives on in the traders of today, who spend billions to shave milliseconds off transaction times. The tech has changed from wooden arms on a hill to fiber optics, but the game is exactly the same. The first cyber attack teaches us that the war over information is as old as information itself.